Saturday night, it's quite nice. Motorbike, this is my smaller motorbike. We're going to go for a wee ride, see where we end up, and we'll maybe stop along the way and talk about how different parts of the bike work. Same systems as in a car, so it should be useful to you when you're old enough to have your own car or a motorbike. Don't ask your mum, she'll say no. What's that called, Lewis?
Snowfall. Lovely watermelon scent.
Yep, it smells of watermelons. So I just dropped in to do a wee bit of shopping at New Craig Hall in it. It's, I think everything's shut. Well, anyway, listen, tyres and wheels. So it's important to check your tyre tread and your tyre pressures. Poor tyre tread, poor tyre pressure on a motorcycle can lead to a crash, which could lead to you wrapping yourself around a lamppost. So I just replaced these tyres. They're tubed tyres, so they've got an inner tube in them as well. Unfortunately, for a bike like this, if I get a puncture, it means that the wheel needs to come off the bike, which is difficult to do. The tyre needs to come off the wheel and the inner tube needs replaced. You can't just plug this in the way you can plug a tubeless tyre. Things to check your tyres is your tread depth. It's really important on a motorbike, it's really important on a car. Causes problems with traction if it's not deep enough. You slip about the place. Bad if the road's wet. Tyre pressure is important as well. If your tyre pressure is wrong, performance becomes spongy, and again, there's a good chance that on a motorcycle you'll just get thrown off it, and that's bad. This particular motorcycle has a 19-inch front wheel and a 17-inch back wheel. The reason for that is if you're going off-road over ruts and potholes, a bigger front wheel won't go down as deeply into holes and ruts. The idea is you get a slightly more controlled and smoother ride. The tyre on the back is bigger anyway for better traction and better control. It's your drive wheel, so it's important. Suspension is really complicated. I actually already did a thing on suspension and I got it all wrong, so I'm having to redo it. Suspension. So, these bikes have got two elements to the suspension. You've got some front forks here, and at the back there's a monoshock. Now, there's two elements to suspension on a bike. Same as with a car, there's compression and dampening. So the compression is the spring element of it, and the dampening is the suppression element of it. So they actually counteract each other. The spring compresses, and if you don't have dampening, it'll boing back up and it'll fire you out off the bike. Or if you're in a car, the car would probably take off. So you need to have a bit of both. And the trick is to get the balance right between the two for different uses. So a bike like this has soft suspension, however it's adjustable, so if you wanted to and you were more going to be on the road, you could toughen the suspension up. Apparently, although I wouldn't put my name to this and people argue about it all the time, for off-road you want softer suspension, so when you're going over the bumps there's a bit of play, you're not like getting rattled to death. And for on the road you want hard suspension, which is why all those youngsters in their slammed cars have really hard suspension. I mean, they probably look really cool, but it's murder in their spines. Murder in their spines. I'm an old man, so I've got a bike with soft suspension. So you've got front forks here, front forks, and at the back you have this monoshock thing here. There you just see the spring on the outside and the tube on the inside there. That's the rear monoshock. I'm going to get too close to it. It's also adjustable, so you can adjust the spring and compress the spring, and then you can adjust the dampening inside the spring. Again, that's all I'm going to say about it, because everyone's got an opinion and I never bother with it. So inside the front forks, just in case you're interested, there are two springs, one to deal with the compression and another to deal with the with a rebound. If you hit a bump and all you've got is one spring in there, it'll twang back up and you'll get scalped on the coupon with the handlebars. So Scottish wee thing there for your free phrase there. Right on the coupon. Ow. I thought maybe I could go on holiday, but you know, I'm at the airport but there's nothing happening here. It's very, no planes or anything. This bike has disc brakes front and back. It's the same kind of brakes that any car would have, well most cars have. Brake pads in here, two pistons on either side, and they push the brake pads against the disc here and cause it to slow down. A lot of friction, so a lot of heat generated. This is a hydraulic system. The difference between a hydraulic system and a pneumatic system is a hydraulic system uses fluid to make things move about. A pneumatic system uses air. The reason that a hydraulic system is used is because it's much stronger. A hydraulic system will not compress, so when you pull the brake it absolutely will work. A pneumatic system, there's play in it, it's spongy. If you ever look at a digger, all those pipes round the arm that digs, they're hydraulic lines, and it uses hydraulic fluid to make things move because it's super tough. Over here we have our brake fluid reservoir. So all the brake fluid, the hydraulic fluid that is used to operate the brakes can be checked here, so you can see the upper and lower level. I'm okay there. On a bike like this, you've got two discs on the front and one on the back. Use your front wheel for most of your braking. If you really have to hoik on the anchors because you're, I don't know, robbed a bank and the police, there's a roadblock, then it's the front brakes that you use. So there you go, hydraulic system. Brake fluid is really bad, proper corrosive stuff, not good for you. So I thought I'd come here to go camping because scouts, that's what we do, camping, but there's a gate there and it's closed and someone's parked their cars, and that's quite a posh car there as well. But yeah, so obviously in the absence of any actual scout activities, we'll probably just go and have a quick look at the fuel system. The fuel and air systems. Now the thing is, they are quite closely linked because at a point in the process that causes the engine to run, the air and the fuel are mixed. So we'll look at the fuel and then we'll look at the air. So the fuel goes in here, glug glug glug, and the air, well not that you can see it, goes in here because this is our air box. Behind there is an air filter and which directs air into an item which you can see under here, which is called the throttle body. This spinny thing here is actually connected to the, I call it a spinny thing, I just don't know what its actual name is, it's a cam or something, but it's connected to the throttle body, and the wires that you see, the two wires, go up to the throttle. So when you turn the throttle, this turns. What that does is it controls the amount of air that's going into the engine, and then also tells the ECU to squirt more fuel in to make the engine rev quicker and to make everything go boom boom. This bike does not have a carburettor, it's all electronically controlled. There's a mechanical element to it, but there's no carb. A carburettor was the old way they used to mix fuel and air, get it into the engine to get ignition. So if you get any problems with your fuel and air system, probably it's going to be the fuel, and probably it's because you've ran out. So you just need to put more fuel in it. It's totally... I mean, I know you'd figure that out, but that's usually what happens. Yeah, you just run out of fuel. On a bike, because this bike does actually have a fuel gauge. A lot of bikes didn't used to have fuel gauges, so you just had to have, well, you had to guess, but it had a reserve switch, and you would have it on the tank, and then it would run out, and then you'd switch it to reserve, and you knew you'd have like 30 miles left, and you go and fill it up. To remember to switch it back to tank off reserve, otherwise the next time it ran out you would already be on reserve, and you know, so nobody here either. I thought I'd come and get some democracy. Maybe see if I could offer them the benefit of my wisdom about how to get out of this lockdown. But there's nobody here. In the absence of any MSPs, First Ministers, or democracy, let's have a look at the, what have we not done? Electrical systems. So that's the battery. And basically, all the battery does is it just starts the bike. On this bike, this is the starter motor here, so when you press the button to turn it over, it uses power from the battery to do that. Once the bike's started, another thing attached to the bike called an alternator provides the power for the spark plug to ignite the fuel to get it going. More and more these days, because there's a lot of electronics and computers, it used to be that you could start a car and disconnect the battery and it would still run. The battery only really powers things like lights, and even then it depends on the design. So if we go around the other side in a wee second, we'll look at the spark plug. So on this side of the bike we've got the spark plug here. What that does is it takes power from the alternator with the coil pack. If it's got a coil pack, it will have a coil somewhere, and sparks in there, ignites the fuel in the air, causes it to push the piston down and turn everything round. Down here, gearbox behind here, clutch. There's our clutch cable here, and other things. So basically there's a lot more wires here. Coolant pipes for the coolant system here. We'll look at that in a minute. The battery is also charged off the alternator. So as you're running the bike, the battery gets charged. So that's the electrical systems. On any older bike or older car, one of the things you need to watch out for is flat batteries. Now you can bump start or jump start. A bump start is when you push and drop the clutch while the car's in gear or the bike's in gear, and the wheel on the road turning actually turns the engine and gets it going. Or you can jump start, which is where you get another battery, get some jump leads, attach it to the terminals here, and then crank it over. So, but if you've got an old car, flat batteries are, well, par for the course. So the coolant system on the bike starts here with the expansion tank. Water flows all around the engine, it's around the block here, all over, it keeps it all cool. It also keeps it at a certain temperature so that it runs properly. It's really important. Down here we have the water pump, which pumps the fuel all the way around and round and round and round. And somewhere in here, I'm not quite sure where it is, there will also be a a thermostat. What a thermostat does is when the bike's cold, cars have this as well, it cuts off the radiator, which is up here. The radiator has water flowing around it, and it's to help cool. So when you want to get your engine up to temperature, you don't want it going around the radiator, otherwise it'll take ages to heat up. So the thermostat stays closed. When the water gets to a temperature, it pops open and the water goes around the radiator, which is tucked there. You can just about, no, you can't really see the fan, but there's a fan behind the radiator as well, to aid cooling if it's a hot day and you're stuck in traffic. Just like in a car, the radiator is here. This is the radiator here behind this grille. It's at the front of the vehicle so that when you're travelling, air is through it to help cool the bike. Obviously, if the faster you're travelling, the more the engine's working and the hotter it's going to get. So, but equally, the more air will go through the radiator and cool. So that's the cooling system. You need to keep a special eye on it during winter to make sure that you have enough antifreeze. It stops the coolant from freezing and bursting your pipes. What do you think would be more stable? The big one or the wee one?
If you're a confident off-road rider, then
Yeah.
any bike, you can do anything with any bike, big or small. But you need a good bit of practice and confidence off-road before you want to take the big one, really adventurous. You're probably best to start small like anything and work your way up. Build up your confidence.
I maybe should have spent
yourself a bit further and further.
a wee bit more time on the smaller bike before I jumped on the bigger bike. And then the bigger bike jumped on the
Again, they
bushes.
say you learn by your mistakes. You have a fall, you pick yourself up.
I think the thing is as well is you're going to fall, you're going to come off. If you're going to do that kind of riding, you're definitely going to come off. So you may as well get it over with.
People who ride off-road motorcycles for a living crash all the time.
Yeah.
It's just the way it does it because you're pushing yourself to the boundaries, and off-road
Yeah.
land isn't.
To be fair, that over there was not really a boundary crash. It was more of just a pratfall. It was
A
just.
flop, Salisbury flop.
I'm going to get this down from here. Where's my gloves? So much for that. Whew. That was exciting.